Good afternoon, everyone. We are going to jump into section 7.2 of our chapter on photosynthesis. As I recommended on Canvas, I had suggested that you go ahead and outline the rest of the chapter, section 7.2 through 7.4. I find this incredibly helpful. Before I actually jump in and read all the content, it kind of provides you with a framework in which to carefully and systematically go through the necessary terms and understand where we are headed with the content. I will always outline the chapter for you as well in my notes, but if you do this on your own, I think you'll find it incredibly helpful and beneficial as we march our way through the content. Just to remind you with what we are talking about with regards to photosynthesis, right now we're going to focus on the light reactions and the ability of energy from the light, namely electromagnetic radiation. How is it able to take an electron from water and excite that electron? And in so doing, we're going to convert that energy from the light and transfer that into chemical energy, namely ATP and NADPH. Ultimately, that chemical energy will be converted into another form of chemical energy, namely different types of carbohydrates. If you think about the laws of thermodynamics, as we already discussed in chapter 6, energy can neither be created nor destroyed, but only transferred. And photosynthesis is basically converting light energy into chemical energy. As we talk about electromagnetic radiation, we're going to be focusing on visible light. This is the light that we can see and the light energy that will be absorbed by plant cells. Because the wavelength is moderate, it in general isn't going to cause damage to the plant cells, whereas some of these shorter wavelengths have higher energy and can cause a lot of damage. So when we're talking about the absorption of light energy, what exactly does that mean? Well, what we are implying is that electrons that are part of atoms, and this would be a review of chapter 2, electrons temporarily can get excited to a higher energy state when they are excited by a photon of light. And so as the electron gets excited, it moves to an outer orbital and is temporarily there. It's highly unstable, and eventually it will settle back down to its ground state. And then as it's doing that, that's going to be the emission of light that we see. When we're looking at the ability of different molecules to absorb light, we are going to talk about some special structures called chlorophyll that are present in plants. So here we have chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B, and they're able to absorb light in some of these lower wavelengths, which means what is actually transmitted through the plant are these other colors. So for instance, chlorophyll A absorbs mainly in this blue range, so what you are going to actually see would be things like a green leaf, because that's what's that transmits through the plant. In contrast, something like beta carotene is absorbing in the blue and the green, so what's actually transmitted through is going to be those yellows and reds. So if you think about carrots and bell peppers, those are going to be rich in beta carotene, as indicated here in the electromagnetic spectrum. So what exactly is chlorophyll? Well, it's a particular molecule that is comprised of this porphyrin ring and a hydrocarbon tail. So where is all this taking place? We're localized in the thylakoids within the chloroplast, which is within the plant cell. And so we're nested here in the thylakoid membrane, which is, as we talked about, it's going to be a phospholipid bilayer. So we've got our polar head groups and our fatty acid tails. So if you look at the structure of chlorophyll, here we've got a hydrocarbon tail, and you know that like dissolves like. So this hydrocarbon tail is going to be nested here with the fatty acid tails of your phospholipid bilayer. Meanwhile, the porphyrin ring is going to be localized on the outer layer of the thylakoid membrane. And this is going to be the region that is going to be excited by those photons of light. Now, the role of chlorophyll is going to be to excite electrons utilizing a photon of light. So we need to back up and say, all right, well, where do the electrons come from that the photons are going to excite? If you take another step back and you think about chapter 6 and we think about cell respiration, what was the terminal electron acceptor at the end of the electron transport chain, at the end of the ETC? Well, the terminal electron acceptor was oxygen, and when oxygen would accept those electrons, it became a water molecule. So now we are doing the inverse. The electron that is going to get excited by the photon of light at chlorophyll is going to come from water. So we're going to have to split the water molecule. That's called photolysis. And we're going to split, actually multiple two water molecules, and we're going to liberate a bunch of electrons. And those electrons are ultimately going to get excited by a photon of light. Now, if you think about what happened to the electron that became a part of a water molecule when it was at oxygen acting as that terminal electron acceptor, those electrons that it was accepting, those were in a low energy state. If you can think back to what was happening at the end of the ETC, that electron was depleted of its energy. So what we're now doing is, in a plant, it is again lysing the water molecule and giving a low energy electron to the chlorophyll, and then the photon of light is going to come in and excite that electron and infuse it with a lot of energy. So what we find is that when a photon of light comes in and excites a particular chlorophyll, there's going to be vibrational energy in which one chlorophyll is going to start to move because it's literally excited, and is going to, that vibrational energy is going to be transmitted to the neighboring chlorophyll, and that's going to have some vibrational energy. And so you're going to have this series of vibrational energies where collectively they start to excite each other until that vibrational energy ultimately resides in the photoreaction center, where really important things are going to happen with regards to photosystem 1 and photosystem 2.